Hello, and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we've seen Knives Out, which is, well, easy to spoil, so I guess I'll give a kind of spoiler-free précis and a suggestion, if not an urging, that people see it. Because I think it's a decent movie and quite good fun.
I didn't like it.
We can get on to things like that, but I think it's worth seeing.
Okay.
It's a bit of a jaunt.
I would just wait for it to come up on Netflix or something.
Fair enough. What it's about, it's by Rian Johnson, who...
Also, another thing was Rian Johnson. If it's fucking Rian Johnson, why doesn't he spell it Rian Johnson? Why is it Rian Johnson or something?
Well, it's spelled R-I-A-N, but I mean, you can't really blame him for his parents' spelling mistakes.
Anyway.
It's Rian Johnson. I mean, what's the problem?
Well, it's kind of Rian to me. It's spelled that way, but,
Well, his name's Ryan, so
okay, good.
live with it.
It's
Joes. well, Rian Johnson's interesting. Rian Johnson's an interesting character to me because from a kind of indie sort of, I suppose, sensibility, he's become a big deal in Hollywood. I mean, he's the only person apart from George Lucas to have written and directed Star Wars films.
Yeah.
He's in charge of Star Wars 8 to 9, and I think he's been given control of a trilogy beyond that, like a side sort of trilogy.
I think I liked Brick and I liked Looper. And I quite like those Star Wars films, actually. Yes.
Yeah. Well, he didn't do the Force Awakens. That was J.J. Abrams, but he did the last one,
right?
The Last Jedi, and he's doing the one that's out this Christmas.
Okay.
I never saw Brick, and I loved Looper.
Yeah,
so much.
I like Looper very much as well.
And this film has the feeling, I suppose, of a kind of one for me kind of thing. Like he's doing the corporate sort of movies, but this has a feeling of like in the middle. They're going to give me this budget and I can get all the stars I want because I've got quite a bit of cachet and I make the film I want.
I mean, to me, frankly, this felt like a less successful version of the types of films that I really loved growing up in the 1970s, right? So Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, those big budget kind of Agatha Christie mysteries with big stars, with Bette Davis and people like that, right? Ron Bacall and so on. People who had been big stars in the 40s then reappeared, right? So I suppose the equivalent would have been, to have like Jane Fonda and Robert Redford and people like that in this movie. And I just love the production values. They always looked like expensive films, and they had a bit of wit about them. And then that was also the era of doing spoofs of films like that. So Murder by Death, I remember, and then they had, I think that's the one that had Truman Capote in it, and yeah, and I think there was a version of Clue as well.
There was a film called Clue, and it had a couple of different endings.
Okay, that's right.
I don't know if that was really a parody, but I never saw it. So
I get them all mixed up. I mean, anyway, I love this kind of film, is what I'm trying to say, I suppose. And I really didn't like this one, And I thought, so one of my friends was saying, well, who are these people in this film? They didn't recognize the stars, and I just think that's a bit of British bias, right? Like, Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael Shannon and people like that are big stars. Though, I do get their point a little bit. Toni Collette is a big star and so on. But, yeah. But anyway, I didn't like the look of the film at all. I thought it looked inelegant and too dark. And everything seemed to be shot in this wide-angle, distortive kind of, lens, which I didn't like. So I did like some of the things. I mean, there's a running joke about...
Well, before we get into those, let me quickly say what the plot is, because it is easy to spoil, so okay. I want to put in a kind of quite a clear spoiler break.
Okay, fine. Yes, so I'm hoping not to spoil it.
Yeah, so let's... the version of the story that doesn't have spoilers in, because it is so spoilable, because it's a whodunit and detective and all the rest. an old man who owns a publishing company. He's a writer. He's got a kind of big estate and a family full of dickheads. Is found dead, having slit his throat in his room on his 85th birthday, the morning after his 85th birthday. And the film is primarily set a week later when the detectives who have investigated have come back with another detective, a private detective who doesn't work with the police. He's just there alongside. He's been privately hired by someone who's played by Daniel Craig. His name is Detective Benoit Blanc.
Yeah.
Who's
clearly meant to be from New Orleans or Louisiana.
He's like a Kentucky, deep south.
They call him like Kentucky Fried Chicken or something.
Kentucky Fried, CSI KFC.
Yes.
And I mean, that is the kind of very basic setup. What happened and the interrelationship between this family and the ongoing sort of all the revelations that come out and that sort of thing. That is very, very basic. That is the very basic spoiler-free setup. Now, this is the version that has a few spoilers. You actually find out fairly early on. It's probably like end of the first act kind of thing. Actually, what happened?
But that's typical of this kind of film. So and this is now spoiler. So you often find out who did it, but then actually by the end of the film you realize that the person who even thinks they did it themselves is wrong. So there's still the big
there is a big reveal scene where the detective grandstands and shows that he's worked it all out.
Yeah, a drawing room reveal scene, right?
Yeah.
So there's a drawing room set up very classically, and then there's a drawing room kind of reveal scene at the end.
But I do think that was a surprising element that you learn in such detail what happened so early on, because then it becomes more about, is the detective going to find out, and what's he going to find out, that sort of thing. Whereas when you think about Agatha Christie, you do think about Poirot kind of right at the end going, no, this is the truth. Just, you know what I mean? In a much more kind of...
Yeah, this is not too different than that.
Not too different. And it's a pastiche. I was expecting it to be more of a sort of, no one can leave this room until they establish their whereabouts as the evening last. And there's actually that's those first interviews, and then it becomes a story about the fallout of the investigation to an extent. I
thought it didn't look good. It looked off. It looked like a Yorgos Lanthimos film with a mystery in it. I didn't like it. I thought it was too dark, though. That could be the projection. That kind of what we were seeing was too dark. I thought the performances were uneven. So I thought some people were really great. So I loved Christopher Plummer. I loved Jamie Lee Curtis. I loved Toni Collette. I liked Don Johnson. But then there were, others that could have been better. I thought the young Colombian nurse, or the Latin American nurse,
Ana de Armas.
Yes, I thought she was perfectly fine. But I thought she was giving a TV kind of performance in this movie. Like, everybody else was stylized, and she was just meant to be natural. And I think that's... I
think her character kind of comes out of her look as much as anything, because her look is... I mean, literally, her physical look is one of this big-eyed innocence.
Yes.
Someone's drilling,
yeah.
Her look is this one of big-eyed innocence, as I say, and... she doesn't do a lot with it, really.
Yes.
Her job is to remain looking big-eyed and innocent throughout.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I thought Daniel Craig was great, though, and I know you're going to disagree
No,
with me.
I did not like him, actually.
I really enjoyed him.
I didn't like him at all. Like, I didn't like the way he looked. I couldn't understand, for example, why he fucking didn't shave. He's got this tiny little white beard throughout. And actually, I was wondering, is this shot on digital? Because you can really see, that he just hasn't shaved, really. Which kind of... that's just a small detail.
Well, I suppose he's supposed to be that kind of genius who just shows up and does the whole thing, but he's not 100% professional. He can, I don't necessarily agree with that construction, but I think that's sort of what the rationale would have been behind him having that stubble.
Yeah, well, I didn't like it. And actually, to me, he is a major problem with the film. Though, kind of the audience responded to him, in several ways, in several instances. But actually, I think even by audience standards, they didn't respond to everything he did. Unlike, for example, Chris Evans. The audience, I think, responded to everything, Though, yeah, he looked quite weird as well, actually, I think.
How so?
Well, he's got very beautiful eyelashes, yeah, and kind of very beautiful eyes. But his face is becoming like, people who take too many drugs when they're working out. They have a little puffiness.
Steroids.
Yeah, they have like a little steroidy face. He's getting to have it like that, So, but he's very good, I thought, And the screen kind of charged up every time he appeared.
Right.
And I don't think I'm biased.
I think you're a little bit biased. He's
No,
good.
because I love Daniel Craig for similar reasons. I mean, I think Daniel Craig's always been very fanciable, but I just don't think he doesn't stylize his performance enough. Whereas actually, I think Chris Evans does.
You think he should have gone more overboard?
I think he should have stylized it, like he should have made it into a Poirot type figure. Yeah, the whole performance should have been stylized. He is meant to be like larger than life and kind of New Orleansy and so on. And I think he's too restrained with it, really.
I get what you mean.
So anyway, I didn't like that.
Well, let's think about the look. You mentioned the look a couple of times now, and I don't necessarily agree with you on the darkness. That didn't really occur to me. Put it that way. So chalk it up to different tastes or whatever. I thought it looked alright in that respect. I get what you mean with the use of wide angle. It's not fisheye, but it is very nice. It is very
bordering on it sometimes.
Yeah, well,
it distorts the edges.
To an extent, but it's more about kind of emphasizing. Like I think it's a film that wants to have that, as you say, that drawing room thing of setting a scene with emphasizing blocking in a scene. Characters strewn all over the place and then standing in the back, in the foreground, that sort of thing. Sometimes when the camera moves around to really emphasize things, they come very, very close, and as you say, that distorts and everything. But I think I think it's used well sometimes. Like I think when Marta is revealed to have earned this inheritance from Christopher Plummer, and the room turns on him, and the camera winds up with Jamie Lee Curtis like pointing, I think, or pretty much it's like a 3D effect almost through the screen at the audience, like accusatory and angry, that sort of thing. I think
she was great.
I think that the wide angle kind of really emphasizes that in quite a fun way. I think the point of it is to have a sense of fun, which I don't think necessarily always works, and I would have liked the beauty of that composition that from the likes of Murder on the Orient Express.
Yes.
With the longer lens and sometimes some of those images look like paintings almost. I would have liked to have seen more of that here.
I would have liked the film to be more elegant.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I don't think that that type of framing adds anything. And one thing that really bothered me actually, just because that these things are meant to be fun, and so you want them to be really slick and stylized and so on. But I think there are things to be observed. So, for example, I think we needed more of a rationale. Why does Christopher Plummer turn against his family? Because it's quite a thing to disinherit all of them, right? So, kind of you're given some rationales, but not others, right? So, for example, you're told that the Toni Collette character has been stealing from him. Fair enough. You got a reason to disinherit, right? Kind of, actually, you're not really given a good excuse for disinheriting Chris Evans. I mean, yes, he's not the most useful member of society, but presumably he hasn't been for a very long time. So, why at this moment did he decide to disinherit them all? And actually, you get the sense that, so Jamie Lee Curtis' husband, the Don Johnson character, okay, he's disinherited because he's cheated on her. But Jamie Lee Curtis is his daughter, so why disinherit her? She doesn't seem to have done anything, right?
She's the only one that I had that question about.
Well,
the thing is, the others I'm totally fine with, because I think it is one of these, again, maybe I'm being too fair to the film, but it is going for this fun pastiche thing, and it's one of these things you expect. It's the setup to the thing. He's done this, and it gives everyone motive.
Well, but I needed more, because it doesn't need to have taken long, but you needed two things. First, why clearly disinherit them all, and secondly, why leave his money to his nurse instead of to a dog pound or something, right? Yeah. So
but she was his friend. She was his friend, and she earned it. She was nice to him, and they had a relationship, and that's just sometimes a crazy old coot can do that.
Well, I needed more of a reason than that,
Well, why did you leave it to a dog pound?
Whatever, leave it to his mother. I mean, there's also, the thing about what's going to happen to his mother, right? Everybody's disinherited. So, I mean, I just think it's not, people have been praising the screenplay, and I think there's a lot of holes in it, actually.
Sure. Fair enough. I think they're praising probably more the dialogue.
Yeah, but that's not a screenplay.
No. No, but I mean, but that is what they are praising, I think, because that's what is identifiably good and fun about it. The way the characters bounce off each other and that sort of thing is good fun. And I think it's also well directed and well edited. When Chris Evans comes in and the whole argument starts, and you get these moments where he's off to the side laughing, they're having a go at each other. I think those scenes have real sort of palpable energy to them. And
I think most of the performances are good, though I also think they're inconsistent, and I like that about it. I do like that there was an attempt to just make things fun, and I think it kind of it succeeded well enough. I wanted it to be glossier, more elegant, more symmetrical. Yeah, kind of that where things are, as they progress, or that you're actively seeking to find out, or that you're, really surprised. I mean,
how do you mean more symmetrical? I'm not sure exactly what you mean.
That things are balanced. So, for example, if you're going to disinherit everyone, you want to know why everyone is disinherited, not just some people. Yeah.
Right.
So...
we knew most of them. It's just Jamie Lee Curtis doesn't make any sense.
Well, so for example, the mother is a major character in the narrative, right? So for her to be disinherited along...
the mums don't get inheritances. Mums don't get inheritances.
Yes, they do.
She's already got her fortune.
No, but you make a will in case things happen,
Yeah,
so...
she's already got her fortune. It's only the kids who need it. She's alright. She's going to be sitting there in her fur coats at the edge of a...
You don't know that. She might be booted out of the house and with nowhere to go. You don't know that.
Well, he would have said something.
So, anyway, I think it could have been a lot more elegant and cleaner. And it's quite a messy film, I think.
I was chatting to my brother about it only a little bit because I hadn't seen it and he had, so I didn't want to know anything. And he said it reminded him of your comments, or I think he said he thought you would say something about similar to what you said about Sin City, which is that as a pastiche, it's good fun, but entirely insubstantial.
Well, it is definitely entirely insubstantial,
Do you think there's
definitely a pastiche?
Do you think there's a comparison to be made between this and Sin City?
No, except because I love Sin City though. And
you don't have any problems with the way it looks.
I loved its look. I love the burst into color. I love the noir feel of it. This
doesn't really evoke any of that it should. As in, it looks like the pastiche of Agatha Christie that it should, but it doesn't feel like it.
The thing is that those Agatha Christie, you still see them on TV all the time. Yeah. And really, they're so much better than this.
Yeah, and Columbo's on every single day.
Yeah, but the ones I'm thinking about, like Death on the Nile, I mean, you are traveling through the Nile, and you have, like, Maggie Smith and David Niven and Bette Davis and Jane Birkin and Mia Farrow. I mean, it's kind of like a really glamorous cast, right? And also kind of part of the mystery takes place in the pyramids, and so I mean, it's a different level of glossy kind of production value than this.
Which I suppose is why I say this has the feeling of that one for me kind of film. Like, this isn't. If this were made for $100 million,
yes,
it probably would be that.
Exactly.
And to be fair, it might still be directed the way it is, and that's an issue. But but in terms of the cast and the production values, that sort of thing, this is a film that's made for $40 million.
Yeah,
I think you looked up the. Yeah. So it has that feeling to it. The budget has all gone on the cast, really.
Probably.
And a little bit on the sets, which are they're kind of great sets. But they're not filmed to the best.
I don't think they're very well used. I mean, even, you could have turned that mansion into a haunted house, or, you could have made it more glamorous or more elegant, or, it seemed a bit piddly, really, for, for that kind of house. I mean, the house in any British television mystery Agatha Christie would be much more imposing and, than this. So
it would feel like a symbol. Well, actually, let me think about that, because there is something that I wanted to think about in terms of the themes. and the kind of settings and the character makeup, because essentially what the film is, or what the conflict between the characters comes down to at its core, is a wealthy family whose kids have all been born into
privilege.
Born into money and privilege. I mean, to be fair, the one thing that I think you do get about the Jamie Lee Curtis character, which might be some form of grounds for disinheritance, is this $1 million loan that she was given. That the difference being between her and the other characters is she seems to have actually built something with it. So
yeah.
But there are very clear references to Trump and republicanism in it.
Very many.
And there's a central kind of argument scene in the middle of the film when you see a flashback to the 85th birthday party, where you've got all the kids in the family. I say kids, they are people in their 30s and 40s, having a debate about Trump, about immigration, illegal immigration, and how, you come to this country, there are legal ways to become American and all this sort of thing. You shouldn't break the law. And then it's all just this bunch of white people in this family having this argument. White, very privileged people
who've all broken the law, pretty much.
Yeah. And then they invite in Marta, Ana de Armas's character, who is the carer for the granddad, to kind of give her views, and she's very much kind of put on the spot.
Support their view rather than to give her
exactly.
view.
But she's very much put on the spot, and so although they're horrible people for other reasons, they are also kind of classical
white supremacists.
Basically white supremacists.
They are
even the ones who are more liberal.
Yeah, however nice they are, on one level, they're all white supremacists on another. They can't even get her country of origin right, which is a running joke in the film.
Yeah.
In Brazil, where you come from, in Uruguay, for these people, anywhere south of the border is the same. Yeah. Right.
And then the final image.
You know what? Actually, that reminded me. Sorry, before I lose the thread, is what this film has is the kind of attitudes that you have in British pop culture until the some would say until now, but let's say, until the war, right? Where, you read novels and that Dago, or, kind of, i.e. that anyone who's not British is just like, absolutely inferior, right? And they could never get people's nationalities right. And they even just make fun of how you pronounce certain names, right? And it's all meant to be like a big joke. And actually, what's interesting about this film is you see all of those attitudes transposed there.
Yeah, and that's something I wasn't expecting. Like, in a film where I knew it was about, this kind of a family, or rich white people, is what I mean by that, and one of them might be murdered or whatever it is. I wasn't expecting such a clear political dimension in it, actually.
That was a nice surprise.
And I think that's something that you may... I haven't seen enough, or even read enough Agatha Christie and that sort of thing to suggest, but of those I have seen, it's not something that really comes in. That's more just background to who the people are, and it's not something that is approached in the text.
This is active, you're right. And actually, it made me think of that argument that I think Bordwell makes, that it's ridiculous to look at films, as readings of society, because, they're often made so much after the facts or whatever that, but actually, in this one, when they were talking about, like, children being incarcerated and torn apart from their parents and jailed, and, all of that seemed quite actual, actually, quite a commentary on contemporary American culture.
Yeah, so it's there on that level, in that particular scene, but then it's also on the level of what's going on in the plot. So Marta is given the entire estate, the company, $60 million of just personal wealth, and the house. Yes. Which they want to pretend is like this ancestral home, and actually they bought it in the 80s. Yeah. It turns out
from some Indian family.
Yeah, but so I think you can read the family's anger as not just that they're not getting it, but that she's getting it, and who is she? And this woman who they, as you say, don't care about. They don't know where she comes from. There's this running joke again, along with her country of origin thing, of I said you should have been invited to the funeral, but I was outvoted. And a couple of them say that, and it's obvious that no one wanted her there. Yeah. No one stood up for her, even though she was the granddad's closest friend and his carer. So I think that's part of it, right? That's part of their anger. And then, because that's also when the family becomes a unit. She's a common enemy, because she's withholding the inheritance from all of them. And then that final shot where she's kind of got away with it, as it were, or actually turned out that she didn't really do it and the cop is definitely on her side, is I think the best composed shot of the whole film, because it's her on the balcony of the house looking down on all of them
with the cup saying "My house,
my rules, my coffee." The mug says, and that's hugely sort of symbolic that she's in there and she has it and they don't.
That's true.
And I thought, so that's something that I really liked about it.
Yes, I like that as well.
And I think actually, for the most part, although it brings it up in that argument scene, as we've said, I think actually, other than that, it is very subtly done. Like, I think you could read that without that scene being there to bring it up so clearly. You know?
But you think it's making a statement that it's so clear,
Yeah. I think it doesn't want you to miss it. You know? I think it doesn't want you to... I think it probably has the opinion that its audience, upon discovering that this family is so clearly heavily Republican and holds these views, and some of them are Trump sympathisers or Trump voters, or however you might want to put it, you will take against the family.
I think there's a deeper thing going on, really, because, so for example, I mean, just thinking about the Toni Collette character and her daughter, right? Toni Collette is meant to be like a free spirit, always standing up for the underdog, and but actually when her money is threatened, kind of, she's revealed as being really quite something else, and more than that, she's a thief, right? So there's also this thing about liberals' opinions that are easy to mouth but actually difficult to act upon, and it's consistent also with her daughter, right? Who's always like touchy-feely, huggy. We're friends. You nurse and I.
Liberal arts college.
But actually, when my position is threatened, I turn you in, right? So I think the film is quite good at those things. Actually, I do like that about it.
I think that's quite deft of it, actually.
Yes, it's true. It's just not enough for me.
No, sure. I mean, that for me is the best thing I can say about it, and I do think it's good fun, and it did go certain places I didn't expect. Although not all, like there were times when it was so clearly gearing up to an obvious thing, like when the daughter is on the phone to Marta and she's having supposedly a confidential conversation, and the camera turns at the end and you see the whole family's there essentially listening in on the phone call. That's a very obvious thing. I don't know if you could expect anyone to be really surprised at that reveal.
No, but that I didn't mind, But for example, the scene where they go to the rendezvous where something is being revealed and the housekeeper is there, I just wished all of that would have been filmed with more flair. Kind of...
more drama.
There's no drama in the filming of it, right? Because you have this thing tied to a chair, and it's true you don't see the face. But it just looks like an empty garage. I mean, they could have done so much more to create tension, more shadows to make it more dissonant or more beautiful or more tense, or there's a whole room for expression rather than these wide shots of this empty garage with a person you can't see in the middle. I mean, it just felt so insufficient.
Throwing a Dutch angle here or there. I think I agree. I mean, I think that it goes back in a sense to the central Daniel Craig character, and I think you're right when you say you want it to be more, you want it to be 120%. Of because in a way that was kind of the thing that I liked the most about the new Murder on the Orient Express that Kenneth Branagh directed. His portrayal of Poirot I loved, and it is silly, and it's the big moustache with 2 layers and stuff, and a very, very silly accent. There's a lot of the similar things going on here, apart from the moustache. But it's not quite enough. You want it to be more. You want it to be more of a panto.
Yes, and actually, I mean, the original Murder on the Orient Express. I mean, if you think of Sean Connery and Vanessa Redgrave and Lauren Bacall and Ingrid Bergman, I mean, kind of that's like a production value in itself. And actually, I also think that what's different in those types of films, but very much in that one actually, in contrast to this one, is that everyone is given their moment. Whereas actually, I think in this film, not every actor is given their moment to shine, And actually very important ones. For example, I would have appreciated for Jamie Lee Curtis to really have her moment. Whereas she's wonderful in so many bits, but most of those
always
bits are
with
not
someone else.
Yeah, they're not about her.
Yeah.
You know, and yet she is the daughter, right? So she deserved the moment. I thought Toni Collette was better at grasping them. You know, but someone like Don Johnson, whom I like very much, and again, you know, he's got a real... I mean, he was never a film star, but he's got this real film star thing. He's very watchable. You know, you're drawn to him when he appears. You know, but he really isn't given a moment, right? So here what happens is that Chris Evans, kind of, he's on the edges, and then halfway through the film, he becomes kind
It's
of
all
center.
about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but and this is what I suppose what I mean by the film being asymmetrical, imbalanced. Yeah, it's an ensemble, or it should be an ensemble piece, and it doesn't, it doesn't quite feel like it. You know, so anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, but I think like it's a script that you probably congratulate yourself on writing, because you go, I've come up with all this clever stuff, how this murder worked, or it turns out it wasn't a murder because someone switched the thing, so I never murdered him in the first place, and it was all an accident, and then he killed himself, and blah blah blah. All this very clever stuff, and also these kind of rhymes in certain things about like bringing up Christopher Plummer's character talking about a guy who can't tell the difference between a real knife and a stage one, and then at the end a stage knife, and the moment that he does it, you go, oh, of course, why don't I remember that line? Like, it has a couple of those moments which are lovely, and you go, oh, I wish I thought about the puking thing as well. She pukes when she lies, and that's actually used very well and quite a surprising reveal right at the end, where she's held in this puke. To get him to incriminate himself. That's a lovely moment.
Well, I mean, that worked very well, though it was obvious from the get-go, really.
I didn't think so.
Oh, didn't you?
No, that was a surprise to me.
I did. I knew that. And I knew that they would make a big joke out of...
Puking eventually.
Eventually, that's right. So, and of course, puking on Captain America.
Yes.
So, I think that has resonance.
Sure, but Captain America's been a dick throughout as well.
Well, and Captain America goes to jail whilst... immigrant with an illegal mother gets all of the house and so on. So, the film kind of is interesting in those ways. But for me, it kind of... I mean, I don't begrudge it. It was a couple of hours in the cinema, and it was mostly fun. But I also didn't feel, oh, this is kind of great fun. You laughed more than I did, really. And I looked at my watch. I thought, oh, when is this going to end? Yeah,
I sensed that. Although you did have a little scream.
Yes.
When he slit his throat, in fact, which I thought. I mean, could there be any less surprising thing to happen? But
well, I thought it might be fake. You see.
Oh right, okay. No, you did.
I mean, well, in these types of films, you never know. It could have reappeared at the end, or like it's an opening with possibilities. Anyway, I think
it's a trifle.
It's a trifle.
A reasonably fun trifle. It's not going to win any awards, or it shouldn't.
Yeah, that's for sure. Do you think it would lose anything by being seen on a smaller screen?
Probably not.
I didn't think so either.
No.
Unfortunately. Which is a consideration, because I was talking to a friend on Saturday. And she was saying, she'd been to the pictures in London. Mind you, it is London, right? But £18 a ticket, right? Like, I mean, I think here it's 9 or 10, isn't it? Yeah. So it's like half price of London. But still, kind of, you do need a reason, I think, to go see.
Well, certainly for the independent cinemas around here, it's about £10 a ticket. But the Cineworld, we pay for the card, so I actually don't know what a proper ticket costs there.
That's right. But, the others are about a tenner.
Yeah.
So, it's...
as you consider,
you need a reason.
I'll tell you the one thing, actually, and this is actually fairly damning, I think. The one thing that it would lose most of all on telly is your attention.
Oh, that's for sure.
Like, I think... There are
any movie does, actually, for me.
Sure, but in this one in particular, there is minutiae in in the plot. There are details about it has all the classic thing about motives, items, this sort of thing, keeping track of stuff, keeping track of what people have worked out and all that sort of thing, and what they're hiding. That in the cinema, you're concentrating on it the whole time, and you're following it, and you're going, who did this and what did that mean, and all this rest. I don't think you'd pay the attention that you need to on the TV to it, and that might just lose you.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. That's a good point. So.
But I think it's worth catching. You know, despite those criticisms, which aren't trivial, I think it's still worth catching.
Okay.
Although we have ruined the whole thing, so.
Well, you know, kind of. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much for listening. We're eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye bye.